Alright guys, I am back again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Dark States Astroea Masques deck. So version 1, everything through the additional special set, so through a fraction of the booster set 11. But again, this deck only uses cards up through the second additional card pass, so if you haven't bought that last DLC set, you still can play this deck. And this is the second variant of Astroea that I have made that uses the Masque of Hydragrum order and Astroea's new Masques form that allows the deck to actually get 4 attacks per turn now, as well as some other new tricks. So as always, we'll be going through the deck and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So starting first with the ride deck, it is the same as before. So we have our grade 0 starter, which is Almagestar Peepus Mulchi. So when she's rode upon, if you win second, draw a card. Standard D-Series starter. Next for the grade 1, we have Almagestar Short Sparta. So she has an auto ability. It says when this unit is rode upon by Almagestar Tyrannina, you soul charge 2, and if a critical trigger was soul charged, you draw a card. So a free +2 to your soul, and potentially a +1 to your hand, if you happen to soul charge a crit trigger. Of course, that is random chance whether you get that draw or not, but we do have the maximum 8 crit triggers in this deck, so you got the best chance you could have of soul charging one. And then she also has her activate ability when she's on rearguard circle. That says once per turn, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you can bind a trigger unit from your soul, and this unit gets power plus 10,000 until end of turn. So we're not running her in the main deck, but we will actually always get her on rearguard circle since Tyrannina's skill calls her out from the soul. So if you have her on rearguard, you can bind that one trigger out of your soul to give her an extra 10k, making her an 18k booster for that turn, or attacker if you need her to attack, but most of the time it'll be a booster. So it does cost you a card out of your soul, but it can let her hit some pretty good numbers, and it can potentially get a crit trigger into your bind zone as well to help set up for Astroea's abilities. So still a pretty useful skill. So next for the grade 2, we have Almagestar Tyrannina. So her auto ability says when this unit is rode upon by a unit with Astroea in its card name, you choose a Almagestar Short Sparta from your soul, and call that card and this card to rearguard circle. So she just calls herself and Short Sparta out from your soul when you ride over top of her, so that gives you 2 units onto your board, although it does take 2 cards out of your soul. But it also lets you use her activate ability when she's on rearguard circle. That says once per turn, if you have a Vanguard with Almagestar in its card name, you can counterblast 1 to choose 2 trigger units from your drop, put them into soul, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So it powers herself up as well as stacking your soul with triggers from your drop. So ideally you want to put crit triggers into your soul so you can then soul blast them out with Astroea's skill and bind them in order to take full advantage of her abilities. But putting any kind of triggers in there just to fuel up your soul for your soul blast costs can still be very helpful. So then lastly for the grade 3, we have Almagestar Astroea Unica. So she has 2 auto abilities. First one says when a trigger unit is soul blast for the cost of this unit's ability, you choose one of your units and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. And then our second auto ability says when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you can soul blast 3 to bind all of the critical triggers soul blasted for this cost, and perform all of the following according to the number of critical triggers in your bind zone. So if you have 1 or more, you choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. If you have 2 or more, this unit gets critical +1 until end of that battle. And if you have 3 or more, this unit gets drive +1 until end of that battle. So the idea with this skill is to soul blast out 3 crit triggers on turn 3, and then you can bind all 3 of those and that'll turn on all 3 of her abilities, giving her an extra crit, an extra drive, and letting you retire one of your opponent's rearguards. Now, this unit is not the main boss for this deck anymore since she has her new Masques form. However, depending on the situation, you might not want to immediately go into Astroea Masques, especially if you go first. So this skill does see some use sometime, actually. A lot of the times if you go first and you have the 3 crit triggers set up to get into your bind zone, then it's actually sometimes better to stay on this card for that one turn, since you'll be going against a grade 2 opponent, and this form of Astroea can have that crit pressure on their Vanguard attack, since the new mask form can still get the retire and the extra drive, but it cannot get the extra crit. Instead, it lets you have a 4th attack. But sometimes staying on Astroea Unica to get that crit pressure early game can be very helpful, especially since if you went first, you won't be able to get the Persona Ride bonus off of Masque of Hydragrum's ability. So in those situations, you might want to just stay on her and use her skill to gain that crit pressure. Plus, you can spread out the power gain from her first skill across your front row units, or you can stack them all onto one unit if you want to just power up one in particular. Now, if you do go second and can go ahead and get your Persona Ride turn 3 with the masks, or if you only have like 2 crit triggers set up to be bound that turn, then you're probably still better off going ahead and going into the mask form. But depending on the situation, you still can sometimes use this card for your Vanguard for at least one turn. So that is the Ride deck. Moving on to the main deck, first off are the grade 3s. We do have our 3 additional copies of Astroea Unica, which primarily this is just here to be removed for Astroea Masques ability. If you do stay on Unica on turn 3, I guess you still can technically Persona Ride into this one if you somehow haven't been able to get your combo pieces to go into the mask form yet or something. So that can be a backup situation, but yeah, this card is mostly just there to be removed for Astroea Masque cost. When speaking of which, the next card is the actual boss for this deck, 4 copies of Xeno Almagestar Astroea Masques. So she has her continuous ability that says this card can only be ridden from a grade 3 with Astroea in its card name. And then she has her activate ability that says once per turn, you can remove a card with Astroea and its different card name from this unit from your hand, soul, or drop. To choose one of your opponent's rear guards, retire it, and this unit gets drive +1 until end of turn. So this ability is why we're running those extra copies of Astroea Unica, since you do want to try to activate this every turn in order to give Astroea that extra drive, and the retire, but the extra drive is obviously more important. So you'll have one usage of this ability guaranteed, since you can remove the Astroea from your ride deck, but you'll have to draw into the other ones in order to continuously use this on the next turns. So if you have the opportunity to use this skill, you definitely do want to use it. Obviously, it's best to remove the Astroea from your drop, because then it doesn't cost you any resources or any card advantage. So if you draw into any copies of Unica early game, it makes for excellent discard fodder for your ride deck or what have you. But anyway, she also has her auto ability that says when this unit attacks, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 3 to bind all critical triggers Soul Blasted for this cost. Choose one of your rear guards, stand it, and that unit and this unit get power plus 5,000 until end of turn for every 2 critical triggers in your bind zone. So this ability does give you your 4th attack every turn, letting you restand one of your rear guards. Again, it binds all of the critical triggers that you Soul Blasted out for that cost to help set up for that power gain ability. However, this power gain is actually an improvement over Astroea Unica's power gain, since the power gain isn't tied specifically to Soul Blasting out trigger units. You don't have to worry about having triggers in your soul every turn to Soul Blast out for that cost. You can safely Soul Blast normal units with this ability, and you'll still get the power gain as long as you have the critical triggers in your bind zone. Which, technically, you need less critical triggers in your bind zone to take full advantage of this as well, since you just need 2 in your bind in order to gain at least 5k off of this. Now, obviously, having 4 would be better, since that would give both your Vanguard and your restood rear guard an extra 10k. So, it works with just 2, but it's better with 4, while Astroea Unica absolutely requires 3. So, ultimately, this skill is still better. And with the power gain from this ability, plus the power gain from your Dragon Tree marker, your restood rearguard should be swinging for some pretty decent numbers. So you do have to give up that crit pressure that your Vanguard would have had, but late game, where crits don't really matter as much anyway if your opponent's already at 5 damage, this card is definitely very dangerous, giving you that extra attack per turn and increasing your overall offense. So then lastly, the only other grade 3 we have is 2 copies of our normal order, Masque of Hydragrum. So there's no cost to play it, and lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 unit card with Dragon Tree or Masques and its card name from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So it's just a top 5 check for a Dragon Tree or Masques unit. So we got the 4 Astroea Masques, and then we got 4 copies of our grade 2 Dragon Tree Wretch as well. So 8 targets for this card in the deck. So decent chance that it whiffs, but you're not too worried about that ability anyway. You're mainly trying to get it into the drop in order to use its activate ability. That says, if you have a grade 3 Vanguard without Masques in its card name, you can reveal a grade 3 card with Masques in its card name from hand, and ride the card revealed for this cost as stand. And if you rode, you put this card into the soul. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater and you did not Persona Ride this turn, you activate Persona Ride. So this is the card that lets you go into your Masque form. Of course, you can just normal ride into her, but you won't get the Persona Ride at that point. So you want to use this card to change into your Masque form, which will give you the Persona Ride bonus, potentially on turn 3 if you went second and your opponent is already a grade 3. So you can possibly get your Persona Ride power up 1 turn sooner. Plus, when you do that combo, this card moves from your drop into your soul. Plus, with a Superior Ride, you're getting a copy of Astroea into your soul, which you're usually going to have to remove in order to activate Astroea Masques ability, if you didn't have another one already in your drop or something. But that does help fuel up your soul as well to pay the cost for Astroea Masques ability. So absolutely one of the key cards in this deck. Now we only have to run it at 2 because we can search it out with the Dragon Tree Wretch. So you should be able to get a hold of it when you need it. So that is all the grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have 4 copies of Dragon Tree Wretch Skull Kemda. So this is the card that I just mentioned, and it has its auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1 and soul blast 1 to choose one of your rearguard circles without any Dragon Tree markers and put a Dragon Tree marker. Then search your deck for up to 1 Masque of Hydragrum, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So this ability is a +1 to your hand since it searches out your Masque of Hydragrum order and gets it into your hand. And it also gives you a Dragon Tree marker onto one of your rearguard circles, which I'll throw up a screenshot of the Dragon Tree markers. They just give any unit on that circle 5k during your turn if your Vanguard has Dragon Tree or Masques in its card name. So once you go into your Masque form, that can power up one of your rearguards as well, which obviously you want to put that on the circle for the rearguard you're going to be restanding off of Astroea Masque skill. So that way it'll power up 2 of your attacks that turn. So this is obviously a very important card, letting you search out your Masque of Hydragrum, which is one of your key combo pieces. And of course, getting that Dragon Tree marker is always helpful for your offense as well, even though none of the abilities in this deck really require us to have Dragon Tree markers. So you don't have to put a huge amount of priority on generating them, but the more you can get, the more it helps your offense. But this is the only card that generates markers in this deck, and it does cost a counterblast, and of course our Vanguard now has a counterblast cost as well. So you definitely need to monitor those resources and not go too crazy just trying to generate markers and not be able to pay the cost for your other skills. So next we have 4 copies of Kit's Peak Griffin. So he has an auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Vanguard with All Majestar in its card name, you choose 2 trigger units from your drop and put them into soul. So again, another way to refuel your soul by putting triggers from your drop in there. So that is mainly just there to cycle your critical triggers back into your soul so you can soul blast them out with Astroea's ability and get them into the bind zone to increase her power up skill. And of course, if you put some non-crit triggers in there, you can just keep looping them between your drop in soul in order to keep refueling your soul to pay that soul blast cost every turn. So just a useful resource ability. And then he also has his continuous skill that's active on Rearguard or Guardian Circle. That says if your bind zone has a critical trigger, this unit gets power plus 5,000, shield plus 5,000. So it becomes a 15k body on your board and a 10k shield if you need to guard with him. So he can be a nice defensive card. He can be a nice target to restand with Astroea Masques, since if he's sitting on a Dragon Tree marker, he'll be at 20 on his own. And then, of course, the power up from her skill on top of that, and potentially Persona Ride and stuff as well. So just all around a great card for this deck, giving you more resources, more offense, and more defense. So that is all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 4 copies of Iram Capricornus. So it's got auto ability that says when this unit boosts, if you have a Vanguard with Almagestar in its card name, you choose up to 1 trigger unit from your hand or drop and put it into your soul. And if you put a trigger unit from your hand, you draw a card. So again, this is just another way to cycle triggers into your soul, specifically critical triggers most of the time, in order to, get them into your bind zone. So this one lets you put them from your drop or your hand. So if you have one in your hand, you can go ahead and put it into soul and then draw to replace it, so you don't lose any card advantage. Ideally, you'd be putting them from your drop, since that way you won't have to give up any shield from your hand. But if you don't have any left in your drop, and you really need some more in your soul, you do have that option. Plus, this ability can be reused every turn when you boost with it. So just a nice way to keep refueling your soul. So next we have 2 copies of Twin Marvel Dragon. So he has an auto ability that says once per turn, when you soul blast 3 or more cards at the same time for the cost of your Vanguard's ability, you look at the top card of your deck and put it on the top of the deck or into the soul, and this unit gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So this card is here to be our Vanguard booster, since if you put it behind your Vanguard and use Astroea's ability, you will trigger his ability when you soul blast 3 for her cost. So that'll give him an extra 2k, making him a 10k booster. So that'll let your center column hit some magic numbers. And it also lets you scry the top card of your deck, and either put that card into your soul or leave it on the top. So if you find something good that you want to drive check into, like a trigger or just a key combo piece you need or a perfect guard or something, you can leave it on the top. Or if you find something that you don't want, then you can just shove it into the soul and get that extra resource out of it. So again, it can be another way to keep that soul fueled up to keep paying the Soul Blast 3 cost every turn, while also being a nice booster for your Vanguard. So overall, a very helpful card. So next we got 3 copies of Steamskara Zargon. So she has an auto ability that says when this unit boosts, you can choose a unit boosted by this unit, and it gets a new auto ability until end of turn that says when this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, you choose up to 2 cards from your drop and put them into soul. So this is yet another way to help refuel your soul every turn, letting you put any 2 cards from your drop back into the soul. So unlike the other cards in this deck, it is not limited to trigger units, so you can use this to shove some normal units back into your soul, or orders, or whatever. Which I mainly like putting this card behind the rearguard I'm going to restand off of Astroea Masques, since the way this skill works, since it grants an auto ability to the one that it boosts until end of turn, that ability will be active for both of the rearguard's attacks if you boost it on its first attack. So that'll give some on-hit pressure to both those rearguard attacks. So if either one of them connects, then you will be able to get that extra soul off of it. Now the attack does have to hit a Vanguard in order to get that, so once your opponent hits 5 damage, the skill is pretty much useless at that point. But it can be very nice early game to help keep your soul fueled up and help pay those costs every turn. So yeah, that's the main use for this card, is just having it be your restanding rearguards booster. So the only other grade ones we have are our Sentinels. So first off, we have 3 copies of Recusal Hate Dragon, just your standard perfect guard. And then of course 1 copy of the Blitz Order Elementaria Sanctitude, which you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So that is all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 8 crit, 3 draw, 4 heal, and 1 over. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 4 copies of Lively Breath Dragon, just your vanilla crit. Additionally, we have 4 copies of Stem Deviate Dragon. So crit with a skill, at the end of the battle it boosted, you can put it into your soul to choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. So just another way to get your crit triggers into your soul if you need to. Next for the draws, we have 3 copies of Rao's Wildmaster Riley. So draw with a skill, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000. So your 10k shield draw trigger. Next for the heals, we have 4 copies of Direful Doll Alexandra. So just the vanilla heal. Of course, if you want to run any effect heals, you can. And then our 1 over trigger is Hades' Dragon Deity of Resentment, Galmage held. So his additional effect says you get, during your turn, all of your Vanguards get power plus 10,000, critical plus 1 until end of this fight. So grants a skill to the fighter, giving your Vanguard a permanent critical trigger. So I am just going with the Dark States over trigger for this deck. It's not super vital. If you want to replace this with one of the Nationless over triggers, you can. It's pretty much just player preference. But I do like having this, especially if you draw into it early. You still can get that crit pressure even on Astroea Masques. So yeah, I am just going with this one. So anyway, that is the deck, so we will go ahead and have our 1 fight with it. And I think we'll fight FuRyu. We haven't faced him in a while. And we will be going second. Alright, so we'll discard one of these crits to ride. Our starter skill lets us draw. So then I'm just going to go ahead and attack. And he superior calls Trickstar from his deck and overdresses into Arcs, which lets him draw too. And let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and guard that one actually. And I'll let that one through. And we'll get a draw trigger. Alright, so I'll discard that draw, I guess, to ride. And short Sparta will let us soul charge 2. And we did not soul charge any crit triggers, so we do not get to draw. But I'll go ahead and call Skull Kimda. Use his ability to Counter Blast and Soul Blast. And we get to place a Dragon Tree marker, so I'll put it over here. And we'll add Masque of Hydragrum from deck to hand. So then I am just going to go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first.
ダメージチェック。
So then we'll attack with Skull Kimda.
にアタック。ノーガード。
So let's that one through too.
ダメージチェック。やった。フィールトリガー。
Oh, but it gets a heal trigger when she does get.
パワープラス。
So that nullified that damage.
ターンエンド。スタンドアンドドロー。ニルバーナにライド。スキル発動。
And he gets to search out Virena into his hand.
スペリオルコール。オーバードレス。
And he revives another Trickstar and overdresses it into Virena and arcs into Expecta.
発動。パワープラス。
And then he powers up his front row. So I'm gonna let this one through.
ノーガード。ドライブチェック。ドライブチェック。これで終わりにします。
やるじゃん。ダメージチェック。クリティカルトリガー。
And we get a crit trigger.
クリティカルプラス。パワープラス。
ヴァンガードにアタック。
And let's see, I think I'm gonna let that one
ノ
through.
ーガード。やるじゃん。ダメージチェック。
ヴァンガードにアタック。スキル発動。パワープラス。
And Virena's skill give him an extra 10k and let him take out Skull Kimda. So we'll guard that one with that heal.
ガード。
ターンエンド。
私のターン。ドロー。
Alright, so we'll discard that other crit
あまた輝く星々。アストロアにライド。
to write Astroea Unica.
スキル発動。
And Turan Dino will let us superior call her and Short Sparta from the soul. So we'll put them like
スペリオル
that.
コール。
And I am going to go ahead and play Masque of Hydragrum from her
オー
hand.
ダー発動。
So we checked the top 5, and we did find Astroea Masques. So we'll go ahead and put her to hand. And then, let's see, I am going to call Kit's Peak Griffin
ゴール。
over here and use his ability.
スキル発動。
So we'll put 2 triggers from drop to soul, so we'll grab 2 of these crits. And then we'll use Turandina's activate ability as well, so we'll counter
ス
blast.
キル発動。
And we can put 2 more triggers to soul, so we'll grab a crit and a draw this time.
パワープラス。
And she also gains 5k. So we'll call Zargon
ゴール。
behind her. And I could go ahead and go into our mask form now, but I think I want the crit pressure from Unica, so I'm just going to stay on Unica for now and just go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first.
ヴァンガードにアタック。
And we'll use her ability to Soul Blast out these 3 crit triggers.
私の魔法はスキルがいっぱいですよ。
So all 3 of those will be bound.
バインド。
And we'll get to retire one of his rear guards, so we'll take out Expecta,
クリティカ
and
ル
then we'll
プラ
gain
ス。
a crit and a drive. And trigger Astroa's ability 3 times to give 5k. So I'm actually going to stack all these onto Astroa.
スキル発動。パワープラス。スキル発動。パワープラス。
Any perfect guards.
発動。完全ガードです。
ドライブチェック。クリティカルトリガー。
But we get a crit trigger. So I'm going to give that crit to Kit's Peak, but I'm going to give the power to
クリティカルプ
Turandina.
ラス。パワープラス。
So she's going to have the on-hit pressure from Zargon. So then we'll have Dyna attack boosted by Zargon. And Zargon gives her on-hit skill.
ノーガード
Oh, and he lets it through.
ダメージチェックフロントトリガー
He gets a front trigger. But now we can put 2 cards from our drop into Soul. So we'll put Skull Kimda and Zargon. So then we'll attack with Kit's Peak Griffin, who can still just barely hit. And he intercepts.
インターセプト
ターンエンド。
僕のターンですドローしますマハーニルバーナにライド
And he does get his grade 4 ride into Mahar Nirvana. And he's going to use his skill to revive Trickstar and burn us.
クリティカルトリガー。
But we get another crit trigger.
クリティカルプラス。パワープラス。
オーバードレスエスペラルイデアのスキル発動
And he overdressed into Esper Iridia, but he's got no soul, so he won't be able to restand him. But he also goes into arcs to draw.
ヴァンガードにアタック
So he's still only going to get 3 attacks this turn. And we just need 5 to block that, so we'll guard with Irom.
ガード。
ヴァンガードにアタック
And let's see, we'll guard with that crit, and that'll be 2 to pass.
ガード。
ドライブチェックヒールトリガー
He gets a heal trigger, which he doesn't get.
ドライブチェックやったヒールトリガー
And another heal, which he still doesn't get.
ドライブチェックヴァンガードにアタック
So Arcs is really big, but he is only 1 crit, so I think I'm going to let that one through.
ノーガード。ダメージチェック。
ターンエンド
私のターン。ドロー。
Alright, so we're going to end the phase without riding. And instead, we're going to go ahead and activate the Masque of Hydragrum in our drop. So we can Superior Persona Ride into Astroea Masques.
あまた輝く星々。アストロアにライド。星の指し示す運命は変えられない。ペルソナライド。
So we get the 10k to our front row, and we get to draw. And Turandina gains another 5k because she's on a Dragon Tree marker. So I'm going to go ahead and play this other copy of Masque of Hydragrum in her hand,
発動。
because why not? And we find another Astroea and a Skull Kimda, so I'll grab that Persona Ride copy for later. So let's see, we will go ahead and activate Turandina's ability to Counterblast.
スキル発動。パワープラス。
And we put those 2 triggers from drop into soul. And then we'll use Astroea Masques activate ability to remove Astroea Unica
スキル発動。
from our soul. So we'll get to retire our rear guard, so we'll go ahead and take out Esper Iridia. And we also gain 1 drive. So then, let's see, I will go ahead and also use Short Sparta's activate ability. And we will bind that crit from our soul.
スキル発動。バインド。パワープラス。
To give her an extra 10k. And that also gives us 4 crits in that bind zone. So Astroea Masques will give 10k when we restand. So let's see, I will call Irom to back row center. And then I think we are good, so we'll go ahead and attack with Turandina first, boosted by Zargon.
ヴァンガードにアタック
And Zargon grants the on-hit skill once again,
ノーガード
and he lets it through.
ダメージチェック。よしクリティカルトリガー
He gets a crit trigger,
プラスパワープラス
but since that attack hit, we can add 2 cards from drop to soul once again. So we only got 2, so we'll put those in, and our drop is empty now. But then we can attack with Astroea Masques,
ヴァンガードにアタック
and we will use her ability to Counterblast and Soul Blast 3. So Soul Blast out this heal and this draw and our mask.
星の指し示す運には変えられない
And then we get to stand a rear guard, so we'll stand Turandina,
プラス
and both of them gain 10k since we got 4 crits in our bind zone.
スキル発動
So then Iram Capricornus will let us add one of those triggers right back to our soul, so we'll put that draw back in there. As he perfect guards,
します完全ガード
ドライブチェックドライブチェッククリティカルトリガー
and we get a crit trigger. So I'm going to give both those effects to Kit's Peak.
クリティカルプラスパワープラスドライブチェック
So then we'll have Kit's Peak Griffin attack boosted by Short Sparta for a whopping 53,002 crit. And he guards. And intercepts.
ガードします
So we will survive this turn, but we can still attack with Turandina for 40,000.
ノーガード
And lets it through
ダメー
again.
ジチェック
So we can once again use our on-hit skill.
スキル発動
And we can add these 2 cards in our drop back to soul.
ターンエンド
スタンド
So our drop is once again empty.
壊れヴァンガードにアタック
And he had to just normal call Esper Iridia. So let's see, we will guard that one with Zargon.
ガード
ヴァンガードにアタック
And we'll guard that with that crit. And I'm going to put a little extra on this because he doesn't have any more attacks anyway. So Kit's Peak would be 10. And that'll be what, 3 to pass? So we'll go with that.
ガード
ドライブチェックドライブチェックドライブチェックフロントトリガーパワー
And he got a front trigger, but that does not help him any.
ターンエンド
スタンドドロー
Alright, so now we can Persona Ride.
星の指し示す運命は変えられないペルソナライド
So we will go ahead and use Astroea Masques ability to remove a Unica from our hand.
スキル発動
So we'll retire his 1 rear guard and gain a drive. And I'm going to use Short Sparta's ability again, and we will bind this draw
スキル発動
from Soul to give her 10k.
バインドパワープラス
And with that, I think we are good. So we will attack with Turandina first, boosted by
ヴァン
Zargon.
ガードにアタック
And Zargon will give the on-hit skill, but he's at 5, so not really relevant.
ガード
So then we can attack with Astroea Masques. And use her ability to counter blast and soul blast 3. So we'll blast out that heal. And that's the only trigger we have in our soul. So we'll just do a mask and Iron. To restand Terry and Dinah and have them both gain 10k. And Iron will let us put one of these triggers from drop to soul, so we'll just jam that heal back in there. And we had to let this one through. And we get a heal trigger, which we do get. So we will heal 1. And we'll go ahead and give that power to Dinah. Oh, and we pull our over trigger on top of that. So we'll give the 100 million to Kit's Peak. And our Vanguard gains a crit, so we should have him right here. And yeah, that crit does not save him, so we got him with that one. So there you go, that was my Astroea Masques deck. Definitely the stronger variant of Astroea with her new form. So I will be back soon with more deck profiles. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.